Now, when they told me to speak, they very clearly made it a point to let me know that it wasn't going to be churchy. And now it was hard for me to accept that, and fit in. What's wrong with this lady in the front? Kidding about the lady part. I'm sorry. I was just kidding about being kidding. Anyway, they said it's a campfire thing. Oh, before I start, Martha, raise your hand. Raise your hand. Go ahead. I don't know if everybody knows her or who she is, and I know you've seen her around, but that's Greg's mother, our pastor's mother, and we're glad you're here tonight. Appreciate you coming. Thank you. I was thinking after I was, got thinking about it, I thought, my pastor's wife, I sleep with her. It just sounded awkward, when I said that to me. I'm thinking, that don't sound really... Huh? Oh, his mother. Yeah, that's our pastor. That's our pastor's mother, and I thought, boy, that really don't sound right. I felt pretty awkward, but we'll get through it anyway. She's been kind of nice to me over the years. When her and I was young, we went to a church. Yeah. We was down in southern Columbus, down the south end, and oh, sorry, forgot this was a Western thing. Sorry.
Put on your mic.
Oh, that don't feel good when someone else tells you. Anyway, we went to a church down in the south end of Columbus, and now Relinda was in Monday to visit with us, and she likes to care for her old mother and come in every week and kind of look over. And I'm glad to see her too. But anyway, I asked Relinda, I told her what I was going to mention today, and I asked her, I said, is it accurate? Is this a really accurate, true, what I remembered? After I told her, she said, exactly. So it's a campfire, but I'm not lying or anything. And Troy and, first let me say, when Relinda was growing and maturing, Martha taught her how, as an example, to braid the hair under her arms, because when you go swimming and stuff and you come out of the pool, it all goes, but if it's all braided nice, I just fell in love with her. Those little things make a big difference. Anyway, when I met her, we was in church down there in the south end, and I was sitting back in the back by Judy Ward. She was really pretty blonde. But I kept looking up front, and I saw Martha up there about the second row, and I thought, man, I took Judy home and hadn't picked her up since. And I'm glad I did. Anyway, when kids were young, and we had a little Buick Spatial, and the kids was in the back seat. Troy, Greg, and Orlando, and we had a little friend with us, Philip Everman. But we left the church. They had a baptizing, and in those days, when they had a baptizing, the whole church got in their cars and went to the river. We was operating under the King James Version, and so we all went to the river and got baptized like Jesus did. And on that particular day, the only ones that were comfortable was the preacher who baptized them, because the water was nice and cold, and the people who got baptized. Other than that, it's just wet with sweat and, crazy. But the boys got in the car, and Relinda in the back seat of that little Buick Spatial, and they just burning up hot. And I hear them back there laughing and stuff, and I said, what's wrong? The boys had their shirt off. I mean, they were just wet with sweat. And Martha got a little snippy and made Relinda put hers on and keep it on. But she was the oldest, and, you have to know Martha to appreciate it. But she made Relinda wear her shirt, and I'm glad she did now that she's older. But we're going down the road, and I said, what you got kids laughing back here? It's just laughing. They said, we're eating jelly beans. And I said, well, give me some. And Greg said, well, hold on a minute. And how old was Greg then? Do you remember? He's just a little guy, but he he took some of the stuff already by his mom's side of the family, and you'll understand here in a minute. I'm waiting and waiting and waiting for them jelly beans, and pretty soon, after about 5 minutes, I said, "You go give me some jelly beans?" And Greg said, "Yeah," and he slid me up about 8 or 9 jelly beans. I just opened my hand back there, and he dropped them in it, and I popped them in my mouth, and they tasted wet, but I'm chewing on them, and the kids are just dying laughing. I said, "What is wrong with you guys?" And Troy said, "Greg had them in his armpit." So when I went jelly beans, he put them in his armpit, which was wet and sweaty, and he wasn't old enough to have any problems beyond the sweaty stuff. But anyway, I didn't have to pick hairs off of it yet. And so anyway, I spit. Man, I opened the window, I was spitting and hacking those things out quick as I could, and they're just laughing. So pretty soon we're headed toward Obetz, which at that time was known as the armpit of Ohio. And was headed towards Obetz, and Obetz had a really nice Dairy Queen. I mean, it was a good Dairy Queen. And I said, "How many of you kids would like me to stop and get an ice cream cone?" And of course they all screamed, "Yeah," because it was hot. I mean, we didn't have an air conditioner in our car. And so when you go down the road, no air conditioner, if you open the window and it's 98 degrees, she'll factor 110, all you're doing is bringing in more warm air. I mean, you've all done it. And so they all screamed and yelled, so I pull up to the Dairy Queen and get in line. 2 or 3 cars go through, and when they go through, I pull up the window and I give them our money and lay it in the window. And pulled out, drove down the road, and just as I'm hitting the road, hit about 40 miles an hour, they're kind of in shock, like, "Where's ours?" And they start, "Hey, where's our Dairy Queen? Where's our?" I said, "There ain't no one of you said you wanted a Dairy Queen. I asked you how many wanted me to stop and get a Dairy Queen." And I went home and ate it, and it kind of leveled out the playing field for that day anyway. But it was a good Dairy Queen too. I can taste it right now. Anyway, we got in a little hassle with Greg, and Greg got to arguing because, he's always said pretty much what he wants to say to a point, as long as it's respectful and polite. And he got in an argument, and he said, finally, he just said, "Why'd you even have me then?" And I said, "Because we didn't know it was going to be you." So anyway, we went out to Arizona. My brother, many of you know Bob and Paula. Well, let me tell you, when we went out there, the boys were city boys, Troy and Greg. They didn't know nothing about animals or country or anything like that. And so when we got to Arizona, and we'd go out, and every time we'd go rabbit hunting for jackrabbits and rattlesnake hunting. And they'd be out there in the desert with flip-flops and shorts on, and we'd be hunting rattlesnakes and jackrabbits and dodging cactus. And so one morning, when we was out there, we'd been out there about 3 days, and we'd go out and hunt and stuff. Greg and Troy woke up, and of course we'd been staying up late. We wouldn't sleep in. They got up early, and they thought they'd just go ahead. They filled their canteens and thought they'd go ahead and go hunt rattlesnakes without Bob and I and Berlinda and Martha. Martha'd go. She good to go, and she wouldn't kill anything. Hardly. Did you ever kill anything? But anyway, they're walking across the desert, and it was just nothing but cactus, and way off was ranches and so on. But they didn't know which way was home. Kind of got turned around, and they come up on this pony, donkey pony, whatever, wild. Anyway, he just about dead. And finally, Troy and Greg realized, or Troy did, he's the oldest, that the pony was going to die if he didn't get some water. I mean, he was just dying up on thirst. And the boys, they was drinking their canteen. So they said, "Well, let's take him with us. And if we pass water, we'll give him some. Then we'll get back to the ranch, and he can, if he makes it, whatever." So they take their belts off, hook them together, put it around the pony's neck, and they start walking towards what they thought was home. And finally, they come up on a span of water, and they get the pony and drag him up to the water. And he would stand there, but he wouldn't drink. He just smelled the water. You've seen him do it before, and he wouldn't drink. So Troy was the oldest, and he's a little wiser, but it was all city. He didn't know about animals and how they work. And so Troy said, I'm going to pull him, get in front and pull him out in the water, and you push, Greg. You push him out, and we'll get his head out in that water. And he did. They pushed him out there, and Troy says, now I'm going to hold his head down in the water, and you lift his tail and suck the water through, and that'll get him enough liquid to get us back. And of course, Greg, being a city boy, he didn't know how they work or didn't work. He went ahead, and after a minute or two, he drops his tail, stands up, and says, you got to let his head up some, man. He's taking in mud. Anyway, Relinda, Kevin wanted, Bob, a lot of you know Kevin, he's been on mission trips with us, and Kevin wanted Relinda to take a horseback ride with him. So she said, well, yeah, I'd love to, and he goes out to the bunkhouse and he pulls in he said, do you want an English saddle or do you want a Western saddle? And he said, she said, well, what's the difference? Because she didn't know. And Kevin told her, said, well, Western saddle has a horn on it. She said, I ain't riding with you. If it needs a horn in the desert, I ain't going. I don't care what kind of saddle it is. So she didn't go. She stayed in. She wasn't about to go there. Now we'll get on the more spiritual side. I lost mine.
What you need?
We have a spiritual side?
Is that it down there?
No.
You're
No, that ain't it. Oh, here it is. I found it.
Okay, it's hot.
I'm almost done.
Okay.
help. We just need help.
Anyway, I don't like to talk, as you know, unless I at least read a little bit of scripture. And I'm taking my text from Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 8. And the New Living Translation says, finishing is better than starting. Then it refers to patience. And then the New International Version says, the end of the matter is better than its beginning. And then it refers to patience. And then the New American Bible says, better is the end of a thing than the beginning. And then it refers to patience. So Bob, who is, when he worked for the federal government, he was an Indian agent. Actually, he was the last white Indian agent in America that worked for the federal government. And of course, the Indians had come over and taken our land before we could get to it. And then once in the 1800s, when the white men started coming in and coming from the east to the west in wagon trains and stuff, they got in skirmishes with the Indians. And Bob's job was to make peace and keep them on the reservations, make peace, and whatever they needed, take care of it. So when he retired many years ago, he started what I look at as a ministry. Basically, I'd look at it as a missionary field, because what he does, it's called reservation builders. So if you decide to make a check for $1,000 out or something, make it out to reservation builders, and I'll get it to him. But anyway, probably. But anyway, what he does is he has a number of tribes in Arizona and Nevada, and he'll go meet with the tribes, and when they got a big issue they need to take care of, some big project they have to finish, and he'll get all the details top down, and then he'll take it to the white fathers in Washington and get it worked out and get that thing pulled off where they can make that happen, and the Indians, stay happy, and he's happy. And he got a message one morning, and I don't know if it was a smoke signal or a call or what, but he got a message from a tribe up in Nevada. And they said that they needed to see him. They had a big thing they wanted to take care of. So he got up the next morning, and he lives out in Arizona, and nothing there but ranches all the way, and cactus and desert, and miles and miles and miles where he lives out there. And so he got up the next morning about 6 o'clock and headed towards Nevada. And when he did, he was hungry. Late morning, he was starving. He needed a hamburger, and there was no restaurants. Nothing but ranches here and ranches there and desert. And so finally, he says, you know, he's got to have a hamburger. And he come up on a saloon by the road. And as he drove up to it, he thought, I can't go in that saloon. Someone from my small group or the pastor or his family, maybe a board member see me, they wouldn't know if I was going in there drinking and playing cards or what. And then he thought, I got to have something to eat. So he pulled his little pickup around behind the saloon and parked it back up against the building. Then he walked around the building, went in the front door. And when he walked in the front door of the saloon, he sat down at a little table right there by the wall. He always sat with his back to the wall. And he remembered that morning he wasn't packing. He had loaded, but he forgot to pack, so he wasn't packing. And in that saloon, he wasn't real comfortable. But he did have. We always carry a razor knife, and so he did have his razor knife. And he checked that, but he thought, in here, that's not going to do me a lot of good. Well, he sat down. As he looked around the room, he always kept his back to the door and then faced, where he could see what's going on, and back to the wall and where he could see the door. Well, anyway, as he sits there, he looks at one corner over there. Oops. He sat at one corner over there, and when he did, he looked in the corner, and here sits 4 or 5 guys playing cards, and just sitting there playing cards. And out in the middle of the room was. I just want to hit one note. When he's out in the middle of looked out in the middle of the room, here's these cowboys talking, just mumbling back and forth and so on. Well, the table in front of him, he was doing his best not to eavesdrop, and but he could hear them, and he kept looking so they wouldn't think he was eavesdropping. And one said, "Man, you've been bad all day. What's wrong with you? Why are you so upset?" He said, "Oh, yesterday we got in an awful fight down at the bunkhouse," and he is telling his buddy. He said, "I killed 1 man and 2 Indians." And he just felt bad, about it, but didn't go any further with it. He just went on and looked over here in the other corner, and here was a Mexican with a little girl, Mexican girl. Here's a Mexican guy playing his guitar. It sounded something like this, kind of give the background music to the saloon. And a little Chiquita girl was on, and her clicking. She was keeping time, so it made a pretty nice background for the saloon. And he noticed, he looked up, and here come a saloon girl, and you know how they don't dress. She come walking across the room, and he kind of looked the other way, and she's coming towards him, and he wasn't real comfortable. She walks up to him and leans over him and says, "Can I get you a whiskey, cowboy?" And of course, he kind of looked the other way and said, "No." He said, "Can I get a sarsaparilla?" And for you younger old people, that's pop. But anyway, he said, "I'd like a hamburger and a sarsaparilla." And she said, "This is cow country. We don't have hamburgers. I'll get you a beef patty." It's okay. "Bring me 2 beef patties and a sarsaparilla." So she walked away and went to the kitchen, and when she did, he noticed the cowboy standing there at the bar, and by himself. No one was talking to him. He wasn't talking to anybody, and the cowboy finished his drink and left. In about 3 minutes, cowboy come back in, and he was mad. He kind of put his hands on his holsters and loosened them a little. He said, "Someone stole my horse." He said, if when I drink, I want to drink a drink. And when I'm done, if that horse ain't back out there," Bob said that, he said, "I'm going to do what I did when I was down in Texas, and the same thing happened to me." And the music quit. The card players wasn't playing cards. The guys sitting at the table, if they talked, they just whimpered. And Bob, he's a very brave man, But He just sat there. He didn't move. And couldn't sneak out. He thought he had to sit there. So he just sat there. And everyone, after a little bit, the cowboy finished his drink. And he started walking out towards the door. And he got to the door and started walking out. And the barkeep came over, hustled across the room and went out to him and said, "Hey, cowboy, can I ask you what you did down in Texas when this same thing happened to you?" And he said, "I walked home." So Bob sat there a little bit, and he still didn't move. And after a few minutes, he saw a big pile of napkins laying there at the table beside him, and he got them napkins and kind of straightened them all out, and dried himself off best he could, and went on out and got in his truck, headed to Nevada. He said he went up to Nevada. He got in really late, but he went up to Nevada, got all of his work done, got home and thought, this has been a good day. And he said, it's just, everyone was patient. You know, no one got killed. And he said, this is a good day. And that reminded me of the text. You know, he said at the end of the day, it was a great day. He got all of his work done. And he said, you know, it just evidenced that when it says the end, finishing is better than the starting. And that's just scripture fulfilled right there, if you've ever seen it.